Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Experts.com files. I'm Nick Rishwain. Today we're talking about child sex abuse interviewing techniques, or what is commonly referred to as a forensic interview. Let's get into the case a little bit here. The firm who reached out to us was representing a defendant who was accused of sexually abusing his 5-year-old daughter. And what the firm needed was an expert who could testify about these forensic interviewing techniques and whether or not a counselor could have influence or could potentially manipulate a child into making an accusation. Now, the DOJ has a whole article about best practices for these child interview techniques, but there are a few things that they need to take into consideration, or a counselor needs to take into consideration for best practices. I'm just going to tell you about a few, like the timing of the interview, a neutral space for an interview, the types of questions that they need to ask, such as, you want to avoid leading or suggestible questions. Counselors have to have the truth versus lie discussion with a child. And then there's sometimes, you may be aware of this if you've watched Law and Order, but there's the use of a doll or use of a diagram in helping to analyze. Now, the facts in this case were that the grandmother walked in to the bedroom where the 5-year-old girl and her 3-year-old brother were sleeping, and she found the girl with her head near the brother's genitals. Her mouth was near his genitals, and so the grandmother asks, "What are you doing?" And the daughter says, and this is the only time she says it, she says that this is what Dad did with her. Now, the victim never ever said this again until multiple interviews with the counselor at the Child Advocacy Center. And it should be noted that the father had passed a polygraph and another assessment as to whether or not he had abused his daughter. So these are very tricky, very uncomfortable cases. I don't like telling you the facts of them because they're disturbing. But this is essentially what the child forensic interview is like for a child abuse or a child sexual abuse matter. Anyway, we'll talk to you next week. Have a good weekend.